Now, one of the most shocking interviews I've ever heard was with an old English woman, probably now dead. She'd been engaged to be married at least half a dozen times in the space of a year or two. Was she indecisive in love, unsure about who Mr. Right might be? No, the problem wasn't her judgment in men, it was the time in which she lived. Her betrothed weren't dumped, they died. All of them, one after the other, before they could tie the knot. You see, this old lady, as a young lady, worked in Lincolnshire in the 1940s at an RAF Bomber Command airfield. What was so shocking about her interview wasn't just how many of her fiancés had perished, it was why she kept on accepting their proposals of marriage. She wasn't a romantic, she was, she said, a humanitarian, because the young men who asked for her hand in marriage faced the worst odds of survival in British military history. They knew it, she knew it. It would be demeaning to call hers an act of pity, far better, an act of love of the most profound, if fleeting kind. Well, I thought of that old lady today, since today marks the 10th anniversary of the unveiling of a statue to the young men of Bomber Command. A nice statue, but it's statistics that really tell their story. 125,000 men flew in World War II with Bomber Command, 10,000 were injured, about the same number captured, and 55,573 died. That is a death rate of 44.4%, life or death odds comparable to that of tossing a coin. Even an infantry officer in the trenches of World War I stood a better chance of survival in combat. By comparison, the much bigger United States Air Force sent 350,000 young men on bombing raids over Europe and lost 26,000. What makes the story of Bomber Command's appalling death rates all the more astonishing is that they were all volunteers. Their average age at death was 23. Three-quarters of them were British, 18% Canadian, 7% Australian, 3% New Zealanders. So the statistics matter, but that's not to say the statue didn't. When the Queen unveiled it a decade ago today, she righted a wrong. For years, the sacrifice of those tens of thousands of men was overlooked. Why? Well, some saw the work of Bomber Commanders dirty work. They saw the destruction of German cities like Dresden as a stain on Britain's reputation. 30 years ago, the Queen Mother was booed when she unveiled another statue, this one to the man in charge of Bomber Command, Arthur Harris. Of course, the men who crawled into the claustrophobic fuselage of a Halifax or Wellington bomber had no control over the choice of targets. The teenagers who strapped themselves into the rear gun turret of a Lancaster bomber, knowing they had no chance of escape if the plane was hit, had no say in where the bombs landed. But they were certain of one thing. They knew how shockingly low their odds of survival were. And yet they went up again and again until the roulette wheel came up with their number. A few of those that survived live still, now old men in their 90s. If you ask them, I wonder what they'd make of a culture in which some young men consider it heroic to volunteer to be a contestant on Love Island. I suspect they'd find it foolish to compare generations. The young men of Bomber Command were a product of their time. The past is another country. They do things differently there. It's the Brazier angle.